Krampus, the punisher of naughty children. I first heard the whispers in the town square, amid snow drifting in cold alpine winds. Children spoke in hushed tones of a horned figure, chains clinking, who came for those who misbehaved. They called him Krampus, not Santa, not Jolly, a punisher lurking in December's shadows, dragging the naughty into the forest. The old stories claimed he was centuries old, bound to St. Nicholas, peering when discipline alone could not correct sin. I had always dismissed folklore as quaint superstition, but that year the town seemed tense, uneasy. Even the adults glanced nervously at darkened streets. I arrived as snow began to fall, footprints quickly vanishing, leaving only a pristine white expanse. It was beautiful. It was silent. The local innkeeper warned me with a crooked finger. Behave, or he sees you. No one is safe. His eyes darted to the chimney, as if expecting a shadow to drop down. That night, I ventured into the square. The moon reflected off ice, casting long shadows. A faint sound caught my attention, chains scraping across cobblestones. I followed, heart hammering, through narrow alleys and past shuttered houses. The sound grew louder, dragging, deliberate. A child's doll lay abandoned in the snow. Its eyes were frozen, staring, but I could swear it had been moved since I last passed. A sudden shriek echoed from the forest edge, high-pitched, desperate. I froze, breath visible in the icy air. Locals said no child had vanished in decades, but the fear lingered as if memory itself had summoned it again. I rounded a corner and glimpsed him, a hulking silhouette with horns, chains swinging, moving unnaturally fast. He didn't run. He stalked, every step deliberate, like a predator savoring anticipation. I ducked behind a barrel, barely daring to breathe. The chains scraped closer, tapping like a heartbeat of doom. Whispers filled the alley, unintelligible but urgent, warning, commanding, reminding of old rules. I tried rationalizing. Folklore, masks, maybe a prankster. But then a snow-dusted handprint appeared on the wall beside me, fresh, enormous. It was as if the shadows themselves were reaching out, guiding him toward his next target. I ran toward the forest edge, hoping to find the path back to the inn. Trees loomed like silent sentinels, their limbs clawing at the sky. The sound of chains behind me never wavered. Step, tap, drag, step, tap, drag. I stumbled into a clearing, moonlight catching the twisted mask of Krampus. His eyes glimmered not human, not animal, but aware, watching. A child's laughter echoed, high and terrified, but there was no child in sight. Only footprints leading into the deeper woods. I remembered the old manuscripts I had found months earlier. They described rituals to summon, to appease, to survive encounters with him. It wasn't enough. The forest itself seemed alive, guiding me further into the snow-laden labyrinth. Branches scraped against my face, chains clattered from unseen angles, and whispers grew louder, demanding, reminding, condemning. I glimpsed something hanging from a tree, a small stocking, torn and bloodstained, swinging slightly despite no wind. Panic surged. I turned to retrace my steps, but the clearing had shifted. Paths I had walked moments ago no longer existed. Krampus emerged from the shadows, massive, relentless. He tilted his head, chains rattling like a macabre metronome. I ran blindly, snow kicking up around me, my lungs burning, my mind fracturing with fear. A whisper hissed in my ear. Not all naughty are children. I froze. Something unseen brushed my shoulder. The wind carried cries, low and human, blending with the scraping metal. I knew now the stories weren't stories. I stumbled into a small chapel, its doors cracked open, candlelight flickering against carved saints. It offered no protection, only temporary sanctuary. I pressed myself against the altar, heart hammering, eyes darting to every shadow. Chains clinked outside. Footsteps shuffled, deliberate, patient. The window rattled. A shadow passed across the frosted glass. Too fast, too deliberate to be natural. Hours passed, or minutes. Time lost all meaning under the weight of anticipation. At dawn, the snow lay undisturbed again. Footprints vanished, chains silent. The town slowly woke, unaware of what had prowled while they slept. I left the alpine village with a chill that never left. In every shadow, every flickering candle, every snow-covered street, I could feel him. Krampus does not forgive. He does not forget. And he waits, patient, for those who misbehave. Even now, when I hear a faint clink of metal, I wonder if he has followed me beyond the mountains, chains dragging silently in the night. St. Nicholas' real brutality. I first heard the rumors in the old town of Myra, whispered among the narrow cobblestone alleys. Children clutched their parents' skirts, staring at shadows that moved too deliberately. They said St. Nicholas wasn't always jolly, that behind the red cloak and gifts, he carried judgment silent, unrelenting, and sometimes fatal. I had thought it a story, the exaggeration of fearful villagers. But the archives told a darker tale. Old diaries, brittle pages and letters described punishment masked as generosity. One document caught my attention, a ledger detailing names, misdeeds, and consequences. Some were simple theft, others blatant cruelty. The rewards were horrifyingly precise. I walked the streets, imagining Nicholas' shadow stretching across them, searching, waiting for the guilty. The town's church still had his chapel, candles flickering in the drafts of winter winds. I noticed carvings figures of men and children, frozen mid-motion, eyes wide with fear. The caretaker warned me, do not linger after dark. Not all misdeeds are forgiven. His tone was not jest, but grim knowledge. That night, the wind rattled shutters. A flicker of candlelight cast long shadows. I felt watched, though I saw no one. A figure appeared in the square, a man in red, tall, silent, not jolly, eyes sharp, calculating, every step deliberate. I froze. Every instinct screamed danger, but it felt unreal, like stepping into a painting of old punishment rituals. I returned to the archives, tracing letters describing punishments. The methods were subtle, precise exile, whispers, accidents that corrected the wicked. I heard footsteps behind me. No one was there. The sound followed me down every aisle, the shadows stretching and bending toward me. Outside, snow began to fall, quieting the town. But in that silence, I felt anticipation, awaiting judgment as old as the town itself. A street lamp flickered. The red figure appeared again, at a distance, hands empty yet commanding, a presence that demanded fear and attention. I thought I was alone, but objects moved, a chair slid, papers turned, doors creaked. A gentle but deliberate warning. Be mindful of your own misdeeds. Whispers filled the air, soft but urgent, repeating phrases from the diaries. Greed is punished. Cruelty is corrected. Watch your ways. I tried leaving the square. The streets twisted unnaturally. Alleys leading me back to the church. A shadowed figure always just ahead. I began noticing subtle signs. Footprints in snow that didn't match anyone. Marks on doors. Faint scuffing where no one could have walked. I read of a boy who stole bread, punished by Nicholas himself. A simple punishment? Not exactly. The boy's absence haunted the village for decades. I followed clues to the old bell tower. Bells rang despite no wind. Shadows moved across walls like dancers, rehearsing long-forgotten judgments. I glanced at the diary. Names repeated present and past warnings inked in meticulous handwriting. Justice stretched across centuries. At the inn, locals whispered of missing livestock, children who wandered. accidents that weren't accidents, each tied to perceived sin, each corrected. I felt compelled to write, to document every detail, as if recording might protect me, might appease the judgment. Chains rattled somewhere far off. Not Krampus, but deliberate, resonant, a rhythm of authority and oversight. Windows rattled. A shadow paused on the sill, watching me write. Hands invisible, but heavy on the edges of perception. I traced the diary's final entries, rituals, symbolic gifts, warnings that the modern age does not erase the old ways. I tried leaving Myra. Roads curved strangely, signs pointing me back to the same alleys, the same church. At night, I dreamt of him. Red cloak, eyes unblinking, hands gesturing in silent accusations. My faults weighed heavier under that gaze. I awoke to snow falling lightly. Footprints outside my window led nowhere but ended at a tiny red shoe, polished and placed deliberately. The townsfolk smiled, polite and ordinary, but the history lingered in every glance, every hushed conversation, every quiet street. I understood then. Saint Nicholas was both protector and punisher. His gifts were blessings. His judgments were inevitable. Even outside the town, I felt it the weight of centuries, watching, recording, correcting. Not every misdeed goes unseen. I left Myra with a chill I could not shake, a constant awareness that justice has many faces, and some are cloaked in red. Even now, when a gift is delivered or a child misbehaves, I imagine the shadowed figure, silently observing, waiting, ever patient. And I remember the ledger, the names, the warnings. The darkness behind jolly legends is always closer than we think. The Whispering Helper, Zwarte Piet's dark origins. It began as a normal December evening. The town square shimmered with Christmas lights, music drifting from bakeries and shops. Children ran with excitement, unaware of the shadows lurking nearby. I had heard the stories before, whispers from old books and older villagers. Zwarte Piet wasn't always playful. He was a shadow in the holiday, a figure tasked with taking the naughty. The old records described him as an enforcer for Saint Nicholas, a being who visited misbehaving children, not to bring treats, but punishment. I followed the annual parade, the children's laughter echoing, their faces bright with wonder. But the air felt off, heavy, charged with something ancient. The helpers wore bright costumes, bells jingling, masks painted. But one figure's eyes seemed different, calculating, watching. A child tugged at my sleeve. "Did you see him?" she whispered. He was staring at me. I laughed nervously, but unease gnawed at me. Something about the way he moved silent, precise, wasn't playful. Later, I visited the old archives, dusty ledgers, and journals. They spoke of children taken in the night, punished for misdeeds, hidden from the public eye. One diary described a modern child, lured to the shadows by whispers promising treats, and dragged into the dark corners of the town, never to speak again. I retraced the routes described, narrow alleys, deserted courtyards, the river bend where no light reached. The streets were quiet, almost expectant. A shadow flitted across a window. Too fast, too deliberate to be human. I froze, heart racing. Footsteps echoed behind me, soft but rhythmic, matching the jingling bells. The figure followed, unseen yet present. I ducked into a side street, pressed against a wall. The sound of a whisper reached my ears, barely audible. He notices the naughty ones. Objects shifted slightly. A hat fell from a stand. A toy rolled across the cobblestones, stopping near my feet. I felt eyes on me, though no one was visible. The air thickened with expectation, judgment, a slow tension that made every breath feel loud. The child's warning echoed, "He's real. He chooses carefully." I found the old church steps described in the diary. Snow covered them, yet faint footprints marked the path, Too small, too neat, leading into the darkness. A bell rang somewhere distant, but there was no wind. The sound was deliberate, punctuating the silence with a presence that could not be ignored. I noticed patterns in the town, doors slightly ajar, curtains twitching, shadows moving independently of the light. An alley led me to a back street, where the cobblestones were polished with wear. A toy drum lay abandoned, its drumsticks moving as if played by invisible hands. I realized then the pattern of sightings matched the old journals. The helper watches, selects, and follows the misbehaving. A flicker of movement caught my eye. The figure stood atop a roof, chains in hand, silent, poised, and observing. The streets curved strangely, guiding me into the town square again. No matter which direction I ran, I ended up where the parade had been. I heard a whisper from the shadows. "The naughty one is near." The words weren't spoken aloud, yet I felt them resonate in my chest. Windows rattled, doors creaked. Something unseen moved through the town, deliberate, precise, patient. I turned a corner and saw a small figure in a window. The child waved, oblivious, unaware of the dark figure behind the glass. The air grew colder, heavier. My breath fogged, footsteps quickened, but I could not escape the feeling of being hunted. The old ledger had a warning. Even modern children feel his presence. The naughty are always noticed. I understood then that these weren't just stories. They were observations of a force still active, still patient, still waiting. That night, I left the town, snow crunching beneath my boots, eyes darting to every shadow. I could feel him watching, even from a distance. Even now, when Christmas lights glow and helpers parade, I remember the whispers, the shadows, the deliberate eyes of someone or something that watches the naughty. I carry that memory, a tension in my chest, knowing the figure waits patiently, silently, ensuring that misbehavior is never ignored. The winter ritual, Yule's forgotten sacrifices. The snow fell silently on the village, covering rooftops in pristine white. From a distance, it looked peaceful, festive. But the townsfolk whispered of older traditions, darker customs buried beneath Christmas cheer. I arrived as a family decorated their home for the holiday, laughter spilling into the street, lights flickering against frosted windows. No one noticed the small figurines they placed on the mantel, tiny wooden children, carved with unnerving precision. Legends spoke of Yule sacrifices, children offered to ensure the harvest. Pagan rituals replaced with holiday cheer, but traces remained, lingering beneath tradition. I followed the family into the living room, observing the decorations. Their smiles felt too bright, forced, hiding tension in subtle gestures. Candles flickered strangely, shadows stretching long across the floor. Something in the corners seemed aware, waiting. The father hung a wreath above the fireplace, carefully aligning it. The children placed ornaments in patterns almost identical to the old diagrams I had found in ancient manuscripts. I shivered. Patterns used for protection in folklore sometimes invited attention if misaligned, but these were exact, precise. The air thickened. Each laugh, each footstep sounded amplified, echoing as though the room itself held its breath. The family sat for dinner. Steam rose from the food, masking a faint, metallic scent. Something in the air was wrong. I noticed small scratches along the edge of the mantel. Not recent, not obvious, but deliberate, like marks left by tiny hands. Outside, snow drifted, but the wind carried whispers, indistinct and chilling. We return. A shadow flickered across the wall. No one else reacted. The family's smiles never faltered, but tension coiled beneath their movements. The children pointed to a corner. The wooden figurines had shifted. Not much, just enough to seem deliberate, almost animate. I traced the pattern back to diagrams from the manuscripts. A chilling recognition. They were reenacting the ritual, unknowingly, precisely as it had been centuries ago. The mother hummed a carol. The tune, light and festive, sounded wrong in the charged air, discordant with the shadows. Footsteps moved across the attic above. No one was there, yet the sound echoed down through the wooden beams. I felt a pressure behind me, as if unseen hands guided me closer to the fireplace. The figurines seemed to tremble in anticipation. A candle flared suddenly. The room chilled. Frost crept along the windows, despite the warmth of the hearth. The children clutched each other, wide-eyed. "They're coming," one whispered. Her voice trembled with fear I could not rationalize. I traced the history again. Offerings to spirits, appeasement rituals disguised as festive play. Sometimes symbolic, sometimes literal. A movement in the shadows, elongated, human-like, but impossible to define. It drifted across the ceiling, lingering above the mantel. I realized then the ritual had been completed correctly, but in doing so, it had invited attention, awakened what the villagers had long tried to forget. The family paused mid-bite, frozen, aware of a presence. The room's temperature plummeted. Breath hung thick in the air. Something brushed the back of my neck, light, deliberate, a reminder. Ancient spirits notice, remember, return. I dared to speak. "You must stop, undo this." The words seemed swallowed by the air, meaningless against centuries of memory. A low, almost imperceptible hum filled the room, rising from the figurines themselves. They vibrated in place, subtle but alive. Outside, the snow fell harder. Moonlight illuminated shapes in the yard, tiny footprints leading nowhere, then ending abruptly. The family finally looked at each other, fear breaking through practiced smiles. The room's shadows twisted unnaturally, as if the darkness itself had weight. I moved to remove the figurines. A chill shot through my fingers. They resisted, small but undeniable, like bodies with intent. A whisper, soft, yet unmistakable. The forgotten remember. The sacrificed return. The fireplace snapped. Flames flared, casting grotesque shapes across the walls. The room felt alive, complicit, a stage for forces unseen. I led the family outside, past the snow, into moonlight. Behind them, shadows lingered in the windows, patient, observing. The figurines remained on the mantel. I did not touch them again. They were silent for now, but the ritual's echo remained, a weight pressing on the house, on the town, on anyone who had looked too closely. Even now, when decorating, when snow falls heavy, I remember the whispers, the frost, the pressure of unseen eyes, reminding me that some traditions are never truly gone.